Now we're all on the edge of our seats, weren't we, watching England versus Spain in the Women's World Cup final. But no more so than my next guest, Leah Williamson, who was set to captain the team down under before a knee injury in April forced her to pull out. Now, though, she's back in training and joins me with her new children's book called The Wonder Team and the Forgotten Footballers. Well, you won't be forgotten, Leah, obviously, because you've achieved so much. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you weren't just sort of just recovering. You decided to write a book in your spare time.
Yeah, it's been, I think, the opportunity that girls have to play football, I want them to have the confidence to actually do it as well. So this seems like a really nice way to do it.
And it's a family affair, this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I wrote it with my cousin, Jordan, who's an incredible writer, which is now available to the world. So, yeah, it's been a really cool journey.
It's an amazing thing. And I love this because, well, I was born in Preston and I was raised in Preston, and it's based on an incredible group of women called the Dick Kerr Ladies.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, because I grew up knowing about them. Yeah. But I don't think everybody did.
No, I didn't. And you kind of just accept the way of the world when you're a young girl.
Yeah.
And then through education that we've had as a team, especially the Lionesses, we focus a lot on where we've come from. I think it's important for young girls to realise that this is why I haven't maybe had the opportunities and
yes. So the Dick Kerr Ladies were extraordinary. They were set up in the First World War, aren't they? Because they would all worked at the same factory.
Yeah.
And tell us a bit about why you were inspired by them.
Yeah, well, they basically stood in for the men effectively first.
The men were away at war.
Yeah. And then they became so successful that when the men returned, the FA put a ban on all women's football for 50 years, which stood in place for 50 years.
It's astonishing, isn't it? Yeah. And they would get like 70,000 coming to see one of their biggest games.
Oh, it was on par with what the men would have had at the time. So it was a crazy decision, but one that we all just accepted and moved on with.
Awful. Yeah. I mean, we should know the names of all of these women, don't we?
Exactly.
And tell me a bit about who you want to read this. I mean, it's not just for girls, is it, I guess? You want everyone to read it, boys and girls?
Yeah. There's messages in there for boys to be good allies to women, but also just... I was keen to make it not about making the next footballer. You know, they don't have to grow up to be the next David Beckham or Beth Mead.
Yeah.
It's just about following your dreams and in, like I say, a story of sort of perseverance where people have said no and pushing past that.
And what's really interesting is that with us all being more interested in being, you know, more invited into the world of women's sport at the top level, it has meant that women in your position now are having to talk about much more than just the sport. So you've talked about your endometriosis, haven't you? And about how there's been moments where you felt crippled by the pain.
Yeah.
And that presumably is something 10 years ago you would have thought that's private. But now do you feel you feel like you have to talk about your...
Yeah, I just think the more we speak about, the more... There's definitely people out there that need to hear it. And if you can help educate and also push forward for research and things like that, we're in a fantastic position. I get great care because of the nature of my job. I need to be able to perform, but there's thousands of people out there that don't have that knowledge.
And has that got in the way of your career? I know obviously you've achieved so much, but has there been times when you thought, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pursue this career because of my endometriosis?
I think more specific games. You know, before the Euros, I have a whole strategy in place for this one thing that we know is inevitable and it's going to happen, to make sure that it doesn't cripple me and that I can go out to train and I can be involved in the game, you know, which is just a scary thought to think I'm injured now, to be fully fit, but then have something like that sort of looming over you. Yeah.
And we've also, of course, big news everywhere at the moment is what happened after Spain won with that kiss and all the effect it's had in Spain, the protests and the denials and Hermosa's statement. And then, of course, there's been this footage of her just sort of laughing about it on the bus. What do you make of it all?
I think it's really sad. I put myself in Jenny's shoes as a female athlete. She should be celebrating the
You were the captain, she's the captain. You understand that.
The biggest achievement of her life, and unfortunately it's been overshadowed by this, but I also think it's important to remember we've lived, especially football and women in football, have lived in this misogynistic, sexist environment for 100 years. You know, it's not changed. So for somebody to expect... I think she's really brave to speak out and to say, actually, the shock of what happened after that, and after that's settled down, to think, no, this is wrong and I'm not going to let this happen to future
yes,
women.
and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think those who differ from that view might say, oh, well, she was laughing about it, so it can't have been that serious. But I suppose we've all become naturalised into laughing things off.
It's conditioned behaviour.
You know, all the stuff that we know, that everyday sexism, we are trained as women, aren't we, in our generation, you're much younger than me, to laugh it off and to not make a fuss. But actually, making a fuss is the new way, isn't it? And people don't like it.
Yeah, well, and unless you've stood in the shoes of, especially in this case, a woman that's faced that, I don't know anyone that hasn't had that sort of experience, and maybe not to those extremes, but a sexist, misogynistic experience throughout her life, and she is conditioned to laugh
And can I ask you, we had a journalist on from Spain earlier on in the week talking about it, and there is a sense that the sort of machismo in Spain is different to the macho nature here. Do you see that difference, or actually do you think, you know, that there are similar incidents here that haven't necessarily been exposed but could have been?
I think in football...
For women in football.
Yeah, I think it's maybe different degrees, but I think it's actually a lot more common than you think, and I think that's why everybody is standing unconditionally with Jenny now, because you don't want something like this to happen, but when it does, you have to use it to educate and re-educate people.
Yes.
It does. It happens on a daily basis, just not in that form.
And will we see you on the pitch?
Hopefully soon. A little while yet, but hopefully soon, yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, we wish you all the best. You are a great ambassador for the sport. All the Lionesses are, and this book is so fun. It's a great adventure. So it's called The Wonder Team and the Forgotten Footballers. Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, Leah. Lovely to have you in today.